a Marvin the Martian theme design, and he's on a little spring so that he wiggles back and forth, which just gives it a little kind of super quick, easy, goofy 4D element. But the key factor to this design that I love so much is the background, which is, I know, really silly because it's mostly covered up by Marvin. But if you're doing these as part of a whole set, I would definitely do the other nails just with the background because it is gorgeous. It is a radial ombre from black on the edges to a light blue in the middle, and then it has these silver stars all over. I just love it. It's so pretty. So definitely check that out. And even if you're not a Marvin the Martian fan, take note of that background design because it is so deep and celestial looking. Well, anywho, that is it for this design. I hope you guys love it, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Daddy, a Marvin the Martian fan.
So we're going to begin by creating that radial ombre, like I mentioned in the intro, with black on the edges. And so when you're doing this, I would recommend, even if you're somebody that really likes to work with a big brush, and I'm talking, when I say big brush, like a 16 or 18 or a 20. I've even seen people that work with like a 22 or a 24, which is beyond my scope of comprehension personally. But I would go small with your brush, like a 6 or an 8. And so that way you just kind of have a little more control over your color. So apply that black. Try to keep it just on the outside. You don't want this nail to get super thick. Losing my voice. And then we're going to do the next color, which is going to be that blue, and choose shimmery colors. I love a shimmery dark blue or a sparkly dark blue. It's so pretty for this type of a look. And then finish it off with that light blue in the middle and pat the light blue. Don't try to brush it to blend it out, but try to do it in a patting motion because it'll give it a little bit of a almost swirly look, which just kind of plays into that celestial vibe. So then we're going to be grabbing our silver stars and placing them down. The silver star mix that I have are 4 pointed stars that have, a variety of sizes in there. And I really like that because it gives it just a little bit more variety. So it's not the same star over and over in the background. It just has a little bit more interest, at least in my opinion. I am gluing these down or attaching these down with some clear acrylic brush down. So if you are, if your background color is too cured by the time that you're getting to the stars, you can always do it with some clear acrylic. And then we're going to encapsulate this nail with clear acrylic anyway, so you'll have it out. And when you're encapsulating it over the stars, make sure that you really press it into the star so that you don't end up with little air bubbles around them, which is always kind of disappointing when you work so hard on a design and then you encapsulate it and it all goes wrong with the clear layer. So just, take your time with that. And I know it's really easy to rush that particular step because it's like, it's clear, who cares? But, love your work and your work will love you back. So then we're going to be gluing a little spring to the middle of this nail. And then just set that aside. And the reason to glue it down now instead of later is that it'll give that nail glue a chance to really set up and it won't break. So now we're going to be sculpting our Marvin on a nail form backing. So I'm going to begin with some black acrylic. And this design has a mix of very intensely pigmented colors like black and red, and then very pale colors like white and yellow. So when you're working on this design, I know it can be very tempting to rush it, I guess. And when you do rush a design like this that has colors that go black and red and then a very pale yellow and a bright green, the chances of it going very well are slim. And the reason I say that is because the pigment from the black and the red are very easily going to bleed into those lighter colors. And even if you wait 10 minutes between color changes, it may happen anyway. So don't stress too much if it does happen. Everything is fixable. And so we're going to just kind of take our time with it. When I say that, I just mean don't rush. Just don't rush is basically the gist of what I'm saying. So after you have his little red body sculpted, then I'm going to be adding his skirt with green acrylic. And as you can see, you can still see the red a little bit through my green. And we will fix that later with some acrylic paint. I remember this always reminds me of one of my nephews. Once I was painting and he was watching me, which is something that I don't actually love. I don't like people to watch me when I paint or sculpt or do anything artsy. I prefer to have some solitude, but he was watching me nonetheless. And he asked me, he goes, "What do you do when you make a mistake?" And I just looked at him and I said, "I paint over it." And he goes, "You can do that? You can just paint over it without a problem?" And I said, "Well, yeah. I mean, it's not like you're not committed to anything. So anytime you make a mistake." And I guess he was surprised by my nonchalance with the whole concept of making a mistake. It didn't bother me. And so it really was, I guess, a learning moment for me as to how much I have matured in the terms of making mistakes in art, because it used to be a very concerning idea to make a mistake. And then all of a sudden it just dawned on me that if you make a mistake, you fix it and it isn't a big deal. And a lot of times you not only learn from the mistake you made, but you also get to try something new to fix it, and you might get to experiment. It may turn out better than what you imagined because the way that you fixed it might not have been in your original game plan. And all of this great stuff can come from making a mistake. And I remember a coach of mine once said that you can't say that you made a mistake. They're happy accidents or they're creative accidents. They're not mistakes. So don't worry about them. In fact, welcome them, I guess, is what I'm trying to say here. So if your colors go all kinds of crazy and you have one of those little creative accidents, it's fine. You'll fix it. Not a big deal. So after you've got his helmet sculpted, and that is with the same green as his skirt, then you need to add the push broom to the top of his helmet. And I started that out with a golden color. And I'm also going to start his weapon with that same golden color and just kind of sculpt that. He doesn't have hands yet, so it doesn't have to touch the end of his arm because his hand will connect those two pieces together later. So you could just start that with the golden color. Add a little bit of pale yellow to the top of the gold for both the weapon and the push broom. So like Melody shared in the intro of this video, her daddy is a big fan of Marvin the Martian. And I never really gave Marvin the Martian much thought until I had met him and he fell in love with a pair of Marvin the Martian socks. And so I was like, Marvin the Martian, interesting. But I've since learned a little bit about Mr. Marvin, and I'd have to say I am also quite smitten. So then after we have everything, all of his stuff sculpted to that stage on the top, we're going to go back to the bottom and do the white. I am definitely going to be getting some red pigment in my white because there's red pigment that is still just sort of hanging out on my nail form backing. So that is most definitely going to bleed a little. I'm not too worried about it. I'll fix that later. And then we're going to be adding his eyes and his hands with that white acrylic as well. The white over the top of the black is probably going to show a little bit of the black through just because of the thickness, since the eyes are fairly thin so they don't end up looking too thick. That's okay. I'd rather have a little bit of the black show through than have the eyes seem too thick. So it's a balance and you just have to kind of monitor it. After you have his hand, then you can go back to his eye area and you can add his eyelids with black, and just sort of sculpt them. The one eyelid goes up and over the edge of his helmet. So sculpt those in place. When you're sculpting these black eyelids, for me, I find black acrylic to be a little bit more granular feeling when you're sculpting with it. So you may want to try to use your black acrylic a little more wet than you would use a different color for the same technique. And then after you have that done, we can glue our Marvin to the top of the spring. And like I said, that gluing the spring on in the beginning gave the spring a chance to really be glued down. It's not that it's secure, so we are going to secure it with some clear acrylic. It's just that it won't be too top heavy where Marvin will fall off while you're trying to secure it, is where that little thing comes into play. So then after you have the clear acrylic and the spring is fully attached to both Marvin and the background nail, go through with more of that clear acrylic and add some reinforcement to the entire back of Marvin. His legs are super thin, his arm is super thin, everything is very delicate on him. So if you add that layer of clear acrylic, it's going to add strength tenfold, and it just really makes the whole design a little more durable, which is always a good thing. So after you have that layer of clear acrylic built up over the entire back of him, even the thicker areas like his body and his head, then we can flip it back over and we can start doing our details with our acrylic paint. And any color correcting that needs to be done, this is the stage to do it. And when you're going through and adding your color correcting, same thing as before, take your time, don't rush it. I don't know why I feel so inclined to emphasize that with this particular design, but there are so many teeny tiny details on Mr. Marvin the Martian because I did sculpt the entire Marvin and he's an inch tall. So there's a lot of opportunity for details that you can add. And if you are looking at this and it feels like it's overwhelming because there's just too many details, the other thing that you can always do is you can simplify it. And there's some designs that I have done recently where I have intentionally simplified it. I know my Mother's Day design that I did this year that was uploaded, I think the day before Mother's Day, May something or other, May 8th, now that I think about it. That one was very simplified and I loved it. So there's no issues with keeping things simple. Sometimes it is called for. So if you look at a design and it seems too complex and there's too many details and you don't feel confident in them, you can always just tone it back. So that's the case for him. You could do less details on anything in this design and it would still be absolutely adorable. So go through and add as many details as you care to. If you are working with black acrylic paint, as I am, my favorite recommendation to always give people is to dilute the paint ever so slightly. And you can either do this in the bottle, or if you don't want to dilute the entire bottle of acrylic paint, you can dilute it as you go by dipping your brush in some water to keep the brush very wet. It'll dilute the paint as you work. Then apply some gel sealer over the background of the nail so that those stars are super shiny, and some matte top coat over Mr. Marvin, and that is it. The little wiggly element of that given by the spring is absolutely so perfect, I think, for this certain character. So I hope you guys love this design as much as I do. I think he's just so cute. So definitely share recreations with me on Facebook and Instagram. I'd love to see them, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!